Cool, Max. So, first off, uh, thank you for joining me to talk about this. Um, it is required of us to be a little bit vulnerable, to sort of dig deep and talk about failure in our own lives. But my hope is that this will be an encouragement to others, and that we all, as we strive to achieve, can one be more open and reflective on our own failures and how they can help accelerate us or propel us, but also just empathize and as a collective emerge group, or just those who are in entrepreneurship, or we can be encouraged by one another. That's really the goal here. So there's no right or wrong. It's just a conversation. But before we get started, help who are you? What do you do? What's up? What's going on? What's your story? Give me like
Yeah,
5 minutes.
sure, man. Sure. Yeah. So I won't take you all the way back. But I guess we'll start at college and then do a quick to present day.
Okay,
So
cool.
mechanical engineering in college, that was the path. Worked as an engineer for just shy of a year, like right after graduating, doing mechanical engineering for a DOE like contracting company. Got the itch to join the military. It had always kind of been an itch. So decided to scratch that itch. Commissioned into the Marine Corps. I was an artillery officer in the Marine Corps. Did that for a little over 4 years, and that's actually where I discovered real estate investing. I was about halfway through my Marine Corps journey. Read Rich Dad Poor Dad. The whole
Yep,
story
yep.
that real estate investors give. It pretty much lines up. Small multifamily, all that stuff. I'll actually talk about a huge failure in my
Okay.
real estate journey on today's show. But yeah, I got out of the Marine Corps. Didn't quite have the cash flow from the real estate activities that I was doing. So went back to engineering, gave myself a year, literally set like the day that I'm going to quit this job. And it was exactly a year from entering the job. Tried to figure out what I was going to do, found bookkeeping. So I think, as you know, like I have a
Yeah.
bookkeeping firm now. We specialize
Hmm.
in serving real estate investors. I also have kind of a sister company to that company where I educate people, real estate investors, how to do their own books. And I also educate bookkeeping entrepreneurs how to serve the real estate investing industry. So those two companies are really my focus these days. But I have been a real estate investor since 2019. So I have some experience in that space as well, which I'll talk about
Yep.
today. But yeah, not doing too much with real estate investing these days. Sold most of my portfolio, and now I do a little bit of private lending. I still have a couple of rentals, but mostly just private lending on that side of things now.
Right on.
Yeah.
So many places we could actually dig into, but today is about failure. And again, not the thing that we all enjoy talking about, but I think it's critical on everyone's journey and inevitable. So first question, walk us through whatever's on your mind, either your biggest failure or something that was a failure, a setback. Walk us through that experience. What
Yeah.
you know, what was the context? And really some of the things we're interested in is what happened. And I'll probably interject here and there with some questions, but just get into storytelling mode.
Sure. Yeah. 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 And this, man, this was probably 2020, maybe 2021. It was like pretty much as I was transitioning from Marine Corps back to the civilian world. Had been a real estate investor at this point for a couple of years. Had a little portfolio of small multifamily. So I had my own portfolio, maybe like 8 units, 10 units, something like that. And then I had a partnership portfolio. I think we had 14 or so units in that partnership. Everything was at a distance. So across the country, I never did any local deals, anything like that. So Yeah, when you brought up failure, what came to mind was our 6 unit from hell. That's how I refer to it. I feel like every real estate investor has a 123 Main Street from hell.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
so yeah, so 6 unit from hell. And we had another property that was a big trouble property along with that one, and they actually happened at the same time, but the 6 unit was the most pain. So our whole model was the
Well,
birth
let me
strategy.
can I interject here?
Sure, absolutely.
You're going to talk about your strategy. You talk about Burr, I guess. But help us, like, why the, I mean, set the scene. Like, what is this house? Like, what the, and maybe you're about to get into that and I interrupted you, but
Yeah,
like, like,
it's a 6 unit apartment building, so it's one structure, 6 units. And no conversion or anything like that. Like, it was built to be an apartment building.
okay.
I think it was built maybe in the 20s or the 30s, maybe even before that. It was like 100 years old whenever we purchased it. So
Oh,
super cool property, like lots of
yeah.
potential there, but with that much age on it, that's where a lot of the issues came from.
I understand.
Yeah. So we were actually going to do the burst strategy. We were also pairing that with raising private capital. So we would purchase with hard money. We would raise some private capital, cover the down payment, renovations cost, all that stuff. So this was no different. That's what we were doing for this. Um, there's just so many issues with this, but we went in with our 6 to 9 month timeline. I mean, this was like a full gut renovation. So like, we were going to move some walls, like we were going to do, like, it had
Wow.
some
Yeah.
foundation issues that needed to be fixed. So a tall order, but we had all our vendors in place, all our contractors in place. Like, everybody was pretty confident that we could get this done in 6 to 9 months. I think it ended up taking over 2 years. So like, quadruple the timeline,
Yeah.
budget more than doubled. I think we purchased this property like at the beginning of COVID. And so, as COVID progresses, if you remember, supplies, materials, labor, like everything doubled, tripled over that
Yeah.
time period. I mean, it was
Hmm.
it was absolutely nuts. Like, we had a good bit of margin, reserved, like built into the budget, a little bit into the timeline as well, but it ended up not not mattering. So projects progressing, tenants, I think it was almost fully occupied when we purchased it. So obviously, like, we had other properties. So we tried to hook the tenants up with like, hey, we have these other properties that are available. They're actually nicer than like where you're currently staying. Cause this property hadn't been renovated in years, maybe like 30 years or something. So we tried to do good by the tenants. Some of them were still pissed, trash the places, all that good
Oh,
tenant
yeah.
behavior. So we, one way or another, we got the tenants out. We ended up giving some of them like a stipend, like, here's to cover your next place, your move, all that stuff.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and we tried to hook them up with our own places because we when we were doing those deals, we would do a good job with like renovating the places and all that. So yeah, projects progressing.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
Can I? Yeah. So it's um it's interesting. I just want to sort of like maybe peel back a couple layers here. So because I mean a 6 unit for renovation occupied, it's a pretty, I mean that's a pretty big project, right? And you took action. You're like, we're gonna go do this. Um, at what point, you know, you said it was a 6 to 9 month, I think, 6 to 9 month. That was
Mhm.
the official, the original sort of forecast of what it would take to actually renovate and refinance, whatever.
Sure.
Um, at what point did you realize this is not going to plan?
So, man, so those foundation issues I mentioned, they were actually worse than what was detailed in the initial inspection, the home inspection, right? So
Mhm.
that was one thing. It was like the foundation crew, or whoever, they were like, no, like there's more to do here than what we thought. So
Of
extended
course.
budget, extended time, of course,
Yeah,
extended
of course.
timeline, all that stuff. Um, the GC. So that was, I mean, that was probably only 3 months maybe into this project, something like that. So like
Yeah.
pretty early on, we were like, all right, things aren't quite going to plan. The electrical situation there was a little worse than what we originally thought. So that extended it. Probably a year and a half down the road, we found out literally like all of the plumbing was shot. And like really needed to
Wow.
be replaced. There were some band-aids that they could do, but the way the original system was designed wasn't even set up for what was needed for 6 units. It was like the pressure was super low in every single unit, and that's not something that you're going to know unless you go talk to the tenants, right? So that's one of those things that was missed. Um,
Yeah.
so I think having a more hands-on approach is like the top lesson learned. But yeah,
Well, we'll
go
get
ahead.
into that. We'll get into lessons learned here in a minute.
Sure.
I wanted to like peel back some, because really what I'm interested in is what was happening within you at this moment. What was your, when you realized like things aren't going well, right? Like this is like, what was your immediate reaction? How did you manage that? What did you do?
Yeah. So yeah, that was an extremely stressful time, because for context, we had other renovations projects going on with some duplexes that we had purchased. We purchased a bunch of properties very fast, and all of them needed to be renovated. And like we were doing the burst strategy with all of them. We had a triplex, same deal. That was another nightmare project. So yeah, lots like within this one partnership, lots of stress. And I at the
Yeah.
time had a full-time job, and I was like going through this, kind of emotional transition going from the military to
Hmm.
civilian. There was a
Hmm.
lot that I was dealing with during that time, just mentally, you know,
Sure.
outside of the business stuff. And then I had my own portfolio, which was fine. My own portfolio was great. All the properties stabilized, cash flowing, all that stuff. So no issues there. And then I had my full time job, had my wife, and we were also dealing with some just family issues at that time that were happening. Just lots of stuff happening, kind of outside
Yeah.
of our control. To like immediate family members. So yeah, so I was not in a good mental space during
Yeah.
this time. It was just it was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate you, helping us peel back because I think that's one of the areas that, in these conversations is to inspect, right? Because we recount this journey in our minds, and we're like, sometimes we skip through the painful pieces because it's painful, right? We don't want to go back there. Like, and I appreciate you talking about like, man, so much was going on. Like you're balancing, spinning plates, balancing plates, same thing.
Yeah.
Um, and you're probably, you said you were it was a stressful period of life. Um, what what did you do? Like, how did you manage that, or did you manage that? Like, talk to me about like that stressful period. Like, what was like, what did you do as a person? How were you coping with that?
Yeah. Well, like keeping my health as a priority, like that's huge.
Mm,
That's really big for both my wife Sedona and I. So eating good, keeping our physical fitness at a minimum level, that is our minimum level. Um, so yeah, and then I think that's kind of, at least for me, like that's the foundation that kind of bleeds over into mental health. And you know, lot working honestly, for me is good for my mental health. I like to work, especially working on things that I have equity in, that I own, you know?
Yeah.
So back then I had a W-2 job, so I wasn't necessarily getting that type of satisfaction from that, but I had the real estate stuff that I enjoyed working on. That was back in the beginning of, you know, starting the bookkeeping business as like a small side business back then. So I had a few side hustles. So just leaning into, you know, physical health, you know, doing some things to try to promote some mental health, and
Sure.
kind of just focusing on the future, honestly. So like,
Yeah.
you know, outside of my job back then, making sure that I'm kind of building all these things for the future, and that, you know, and then obviously having like a super supportive wife, like partner, that,
Mhm.
I mean, that could arguably be the most important the most important thing. Um, so yeah, I think, and you know, just for us too, something that helps us with our mental is getting outdoors. Like we love to do lots of different activities outdoors, and so you know, we were living in Utah at that time. So I got out of the Marine Corps. I was stationed in Camp Pendleton, California, Southern California. We lived in San Clemente for a couple of years, and so then we shot over to
Mhm.
Utah afterwards, because we're big into snowboarding, and Utah's got some great snow. So we moved to Utah. And so getting out, you know, snowboarding, going for hikes, snowshoeing, getting outdoors, that's like huge for our mental.
Yeah. I love that. I appreciate you, you know, talking about that aspect of this situation, right? Of like, at some point, I think it's this desire to have some autonomy, right? Some I'm going to call it control, but like when things are out of control, it's like I can control myself, right?
Mm,
I can control physical activity that leads to mental stability. I can even like work on my mental stability. But I want to go back to this situation, this 6 unit from hell. Um, so things are not going well. You learned that the foundation was gonna, you know, it sounds like there's some things that are snowballing. I, you know, feel free to tell us anything else interesting about this whole situation. I mean, it's a lot of moving parts. You know, tenants moving in and out, contractors. Um, at what point did you realize like this is a failure? That's one question. And then like what maybe the follow-up question is what did you do?
mhm. Yeah. Yeah. So I think when both my partner and I realized it was a failure was it was either the 6 month or the nine month mark, where the hard money lender comes knocking. And
Mm,
this is a hard money lender that, like, I personally know her. Like she owns, you know, she owns some like large lending company now based out of Charleston, South Carolina. And I have a personal relationship with her. Like, she's the owner of the company. And we did, I think, almost all of our deals with her, and everything went great before this
yeah.
project. And so, you know, she comes knocking. Since we have a relationship, she decides to give us extensions. And, you know, say it's 6 months to 9 months. Okay, cool. I'll extend you to 9 months. But every single month, you know, you owe a point on top of the interest. And like, this is,
Oh man.
yeah. So like our negative cash flow situation became dire. Like we ended up having to raise more private capital, going further into the hole with this project, just to cover payments. And
Hmm.
so Now, like I super appreciate her doing that because she could have just taken the property if she wanted to, right? And so we get to the 9 month, we have to have another very uncomfortable conversation. Like, hey, we can't, like, we're still going with this project. Like, we've tried to refinance, no lender will touch it. Like, we've talked to 20 something lenders, nobody will touch it. You know, we can't raise more capital to pay you out because then that puts us in a even like worse position. And like, so it was just a lot stacking up. So we had that. And then I want to say maybe around the year mark, you know, like this whole time we're hounding our GC, who we had a very good relationship with. We've been working together for 2+ years at this point. He had done all of our other projects and my personal projects as well. And he was sourced through our property manager. Very good relationship with the property manager, super good management company. And he, you know, he was going a little rogue. He would rack up a $20,000 bill and then just be like, you know, here you go. And we're already over budget. And so we had multiple conversations with him and the PM together, because the PM was supposed to be managing him, which wasn't happening. And that, you know, that's another mistake. But multiple conversations like, hey, we're already this much over budget. If, you know, like from now on, we have to authorize everything, because like we are just bleeding so much money every single week, every single month. And I think we had 2 or 3 conversations like that. And we also sent email traffic to document that stuff, because like in the back of our minds, we were like, this may like turn into a lawsuit. So we were documenting everything through writing, because we were just having phone calls, you know? So he just keeps going rogue, just keeps running up the bill. The PM pays him and we reimburse the PM. That's how it was working, which is a terrible system for a major project like this. And so the PM pays him. I mean, it was close to a $20,000 payout that was not authorized. Nothing was ever, nothing was ever sent to us. And it also seemed very inflated, almost like he was trying to like cash out on us or something, and then like split. And so at that point, you know, maybe we're a year in at that point or so, had a conversation with the PM, and it's awkward because they manage all of our properties, right? And my personal properties. But we said, hey, like, we're not paying this because it wasn't authorized. And so the PM paid this dude like $20K. And we're like, hey, we're not like that wasn't authorized. And we're not, you know, if it keeps going up, like we're not paying any of that either. And so the GC splits, so runs up a 20K-ish bill on top of everything else we've already paid him, splits. And so we don't have contractors. And then the PM sues us.
Oh man.
And so we, you know, we have to hire an attorney, which is more money out of pocket, right?
Yeah.
And this is bringing up some old feelings, Jared.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think we skip over these parts because it is somewhat painful, right?
It is. Yep.
But and I appreciate it. I appreciate it because and I love that you're laughing about it, because, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But you know, laughter is medicine, and I'm smiling because I have very similar experiences, right? And we'll pause there because I want to talk about in retrospect.
Sure.
But let's just go with this moment in the original question, which was, you know, at the moment, like the moment, and I think you're building towards it. Like, what was the moment where you're like, this is a failure, or has failed, or is failing, and we have to sort of accept that?
Yeah. It was really when the GC walked, and I mean, I would call that stealing $20,000 from us. Really stealing it from the PM. But then the PM sued us for that amount and extra, right? And so we hire an attorney. So our attorney, after we presented all of the documentation and everything that we had, the contract in place, the email traffic, all that stuff, the attorney said, "Oh man, you guys actually have a really good case because this is well documented. Like I don't think the PM has anything to stand on." But he was like, since that's the case, we're going to have to take this to court. And it's not, I think small claims is 10K or less. This was above that. So it's not just small claims court, you know. And I think I lived in Utah or Oregon at the time. By this point, started the project when I was in Utah, but by this point, I probably was somewhere else. My partner was in Louisiana. This was all going down in South Carolina. So it's like, do we really want to disrupt our lives for a period of time, have to be away from our families just to do this? And so we ended up settling. We ended up paying the PM. And that's just kind of how some of these legal things go, you know.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them end up like that. But yeah, so really when all of that kind of came crashing down all at one time, I think both of us at that point were like, all right, like this thing is a total failure. Like we just need to, now we're in like mitigation mode, you know,
Yeah.
like,
Okay. Well, let's pause there because I think this is a really crucial aspect of experiences like this, like failure experiences. When there's this point of things start to go really the wrong way, right? And based on whatever, right? And I think we try to kind of fix it, right? We try to figure out how to make it right again. And then there's a point where there's an acceptance, right? And you mentioned things just came crashing down. Like there were too many things happening. You're like, okay, there's acceptance that this is not going well. And you got to this point, and you're about to talk about like, well, how do we move this thing forward? And so I want to just pause for a second and say, like, what, once you accepted that, what was the feeling? Like, where were you? Where was your head? Where were your emotions? Because you talked earlier about this is a very emotional time in your life. This is a very emotional situation. It's kind of, it's a lot going on, but like, talk about you. Like once you had
mhm.
that moment of like, okay, this is not working. What happened within
I
you?
mean, I just, it was just a feeling of total failure, just like
Mm,
professionally, personally. Like I felt like I failed my family because, like, to give more context, not my family at the time being my wife, to give more context, like at this point, my personal portfolio was doing great. The bookkeeping business was doing great. Like everything I was doing outside of this partnership, not to say anything was bad about the partnership, but it's just what was happening at the time. Everything that I was doing personally was working great. And I was having to literally take money from the bookkeeping business, from my personal portfolio. I got a HELOC to cover some of this debt in this partnership, like a personal HELOC on my personal residence. And so, I had to pull in the end, I had to pull about 150K cash from my own stuff and give it to this partnership. And some of that was debt, right? Some of that was on a HELOC. And
mm,
so, yeah, I mean, I was way down in the dumps because at that time, that was like, it was almost it was like a hopelessness, like a helplessness and a hopelessness. And
yeah.
like I just wasn't super, like I knew it was going to take me multiple years to kind of
Mm,
dig out of that hole.
yeah. We'll just
Yeah.
sit with that for a second. Because that's pretty raw. And I appreciate that. And I think we all experience those moments, right? Of just like, man, I feel like an utter failure. Like none of this is going the way I wanted it to. Um, and that's rough. I referenced this earlier. Like it's painful, right? So when we think about these experiences and how we move on from that, and then when we recount these experiences, it's like I don't want to go revisit that pain, you know, which I'm forcing you to do, which I appreciate it. Appreciate you playing along because I think it's important for us because I've been there too, man. Uh, I have $150,000 in a 100-year-old house that I'm negative on that I haven't made money yet, and I've owned it for 4 years. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's rough, and a partnership that has kind of eroded, and those are hard. Those are hard things to acknowledge. But there's a turning point with all of this, and sometimes it's in the future, right? Sometimes it's like I've been to the turning point. I don't know where you are with this experience, but you talked about acknowledgement, you talked about acceptance, and and feeling that heaviness. Have you made steps to move forward? And if you have, what were they? Like, how do you move forward from that? What did you do? And again, I'm not assuming that you have or that you did or that how I don't know how long ago this was. We
Mhm.
kind of talked about times a little bit, but talk about that. Like from that moment of despair, how do you move forward? And what specifically did you do to move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, once we went into mitigation mode, it was all about just mitigating the losses from that point because we knew we were going to lose money, and so we just wanted to limit the amount that we lost. Still ended up losing a ton of money, um, but we did everything we could to mitigate. I mean, my the GC left. We still had 2 or 3 more units that needed renovating. My partner was like more so handling that side of it. We were sharing duties like that, but he was more so in tune with the renovations and schedules and all that stuff. And so he scrambled on his side to get some. He basically became the GC while having a full-time job, a family, not being in the local area. So he had to get some contractors. He actually ended up going there himself for like a week. I couldn't go due to some of the family issues that I referenced earlier, but yeah, he ended up going there himself and actually like doing like manual labor himself. So he took a week off of his full-time job and flew there, got in there, did some like light construction, did some painting, that sort of stuff, got some appliances and stuff in like himself, which was huge. And so, we were just doing things like that to try to mitigate, still had that hard money that was crushing us every single month with the extra point every single month and some other things, private lenders. But and then, we ended up getting it sold. If you want to jump to that point, we ended up getting
Yeah,
it
yeah.
sold.
What's the outcome here?
Yeah, like yeah, we tried to refinance so many times, just to get some lighter debt and like so we could finish the project properly. But we just couldn't. Nobody would touch it. We almost got to the
Yeah.
finish line several times with several lenders, and then they pulled out at the like we almost had like a closing date set, and then they pulled out. So yeah, we ended up selling it. It took us a while to sell it, but um, a local investor there came in with a lot of cash, and he knew what needed to be done and kind of what it would be worth after doing all of that stuff. And he had the cash to do it. So he came in, purchased it. And so this like lawsuit situation was still happening after we sold the project for months. And so it was like, this thing was still lingering, like in our,
Hmm.
in our minds and in our bank accounts. This project was still
Yep.
lingering. We still had, so one of my good friends, he was one of our private lenders on it. Like we have a thing, no matter a project could go to zero and like we are still going to pay back our lenders, hard money, private money, like it doesn't matter, like we're going to pay all of our debts. And so we paid everybody off except for one of my good friends. He still had some money with us, and so we worked overtime to pay him off, but eventually everybody got paid off. Lawsuit never went to court. We settled, we paid that off. So everything was kind of paid out, and then we could focus on other stuff. But
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was really just working step by step. Like, okay, here's the next monster to tackle. Here's the next monster to tackle. Um, and then a triplex in conjunction with that, with similar stuff happening at the exact same time.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap up here in a little bit. I know we could talk at length about many parts of this experience. Um, and I just want to reflect some things that I heard you say, which I want to pull out, which was, there's that moment of like, this isn't going to work, right? So instead of trying to like push the boulder up the hill, it's like, let's just sort of like get in front of it and sweep some things because we're not going to stop it, right? But we can mitigate how much damage it's going to do.
Mm.
And, I think there's this moment in these conversations where it's like, I accepted this and now we go and take action. And it's interesting because I think in that, and we'll talk about, I want to wrap this up with like lessons learned, right? It's that whole experience, there's a ton of lessons learned, but, after this sort of the moment of acceptance, it's like, I think that's where some of the really, the most valuable lessons are learned. And I could be wrong about that, but this is what I want to get into is, how has this, there's so many questions I could ask, but let's just go with the obvious one. Like, what did you take away from this experience? Like, what were the unexpected lessons that emerged from this? How have they shaped, how you've, the things that you've done since then, how you've approached those, risk. I don't know. There's all kinds of things we can dig into, but I'm sure you have a lot to offer there. So let's just go with the top one. What lessons have you learned?
Yeah, man. Yeah, there's like the big 30,000-foot view lessons learned, and then there's the super
Mm,
duper tactical ground level, like deal
I
by
love that.
deal lessons
Yeah.
learned. And so that the 30,000-foot view is, for me, honestly, nothing against my partner. We're still best friends. Like, he's one of the best dudes I know. So like nothing. This isn't saying anything against him, but it's on me. It caused me to evaluate partnerships.
Mm,
And I actually created partnership criteria for myself. Like, I am not allowed to enter into a partnership this moment forward unless it fits these criteria. And that partnership absolutely does not fit those criteria. And I'm not going to go into everything, but like the top criteria is, one of the partners needs to do the thing that makes money full time. Like, we're not going to enter into a side hustle together. Like, if I'm focused on other stuff that takes a lot of my time and energy, and somebody wants to partner, then that partner, like, that is their thing. Like, they are a real estate investor, full-time real estate investor, or whatever. Like, they don't have another business. They don't have a full-time job. Like, they are focused on that thing and they are very hands-on with it. And then I have very specific roles and responsibilities, within the partnership that contribute to the partnership. So that was a huge thing. And then not having super duper clearly defined roles and responsibilities, like very basic stuff, like basic partnership stuff, we just weren't doing. And we had conversations about that. We were, how do you want to divvy this up? But we had differing opinions on that stuff. And so it kind of never got settled. And then everything blew up. So that's kind of, and then like the 40,000-foot view, lesson learned for me is I reevaluated my focus on entrepreneurship. And I said, okay, I'm not messing with any of this. Like, I started evaluating just the like foundational business models that I was involved with. And so if you look at, we were rental properties was our business. And so with rental properties, and this is just my opinion, it's a high capex, low cash flow business model. If you're just looking at the value of the asset, how much cash flow that asset produces relative to the value of the asset, whether you have leverage on it or not, And then you look at, I mean, the whole thing is a fixed asset made up of all these different fixed asset components, right? And so it's very high capital expenditure, very low cash flow, just as a business model. And so I totally shifted my focus to high cash flow, low capex business models. Hence my bookkeeping firm. It's like all cash flow. My education company, all cash flow. And so I actually, like, I'm not allowing myself to jump back into investing, whether it be real estate or, or other similar types of investing, until my, active businesses, my high cash flow, low capex businesses are at a certain level. Just in case, something goes wrong with the investing activities, I have the appropriate cash flow in place to not really fill it, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then getting down super tactical, I won't go through the whole list. I mean, like, it calls me to revamp my entire due diligence process and criteria for deals. Like that was the biggest thing, like on the tactical level.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think, the question that I'm sort of thinking about in my head is like, would you have arrived at those lessons without this experience?
No, I don't think so, because I'll tell you, man, like, whenever we were looking at acquiring this 6 unit, there was another portfolio of, I think it was 3 duplexes. So either way, we add 6 units to our portfolio. And so the duplexes, they were in the same neighborhood as the neighborhood we had already invested in duplexes in. It was the same exact business model. Like, we knew that in and out, but we asked ourselves, like, okay, like, when are we going to get out of our comfort zone? Like, that's what we told ourselves, right? Like, instead of continuing to do the boring thing that actually makes money, we're going to get out of our comfort zone. And so, that was the main thing with choosing the 6 unit was, well, let's start to break into commercial properties and then take it up from there and eventually get into apartments. Right. And so I've honestly thought about that a lot. Like, man, if we just would have ran the same playbook with those other 3 duplexes, like, we would be in a much, much different financial position, because the duplexes worked out really well. So
Yeah. Well, last question here. How has your relationship, if you want to call it that, or your perspective on failure changed since this experience, or has it?
I don't think my perspective on failure has changed. Like, it's a big uh like business core value of mine. Like, any business I'm associated with, one of the core values has to be speed, and a big speed of communication, like speed of a lot of different things. But one of those big things is failure. Like I tell our staff within the bookkeeping firm all the time, like, we need to get the failures out of the way as quickly as possible. So, like, we are not afraid to fail. Like, we are taking action, and we are honestly hoping we fail, because eventually we're going to fail. Right. So, like, let's just go ahead and get it out of the way so we can get to the good stuff. So, and, like, all of my experiences in the Marine Corps from the very beginning, going through boot camp, I think that probably shaped, more so than anything else, the way I view failure and the way I look at failure, because they do things and they require things of you that are impossible so that you fail, and to see how you respond to that, and then to teach you better ways of responding to it, and kind of how to take it as fuel and project it out. So I don't think it changed the way I viewed failure, but it was one of those failures that just, like, lingered for way longer, because it was financial. It was a financial failure. So, like, those tend to linger for a few years, sometimes, depending on how drastic they are. But But yeah, I don't know. That's a great question. I'm not sure if it changed the way I looked at failure, but it was just, I knew it was necessary to learn all the things that I learned and go forward in a better way.
Yeah. Well, I love the aspect that you've incorporated into your business, which is we're going to fail. Like people, we're going to make mistakes. It's actually inevitable. If we're going to go doing anything worth doing, that is great, right? And let's do it. Let's do it. Let's get through it. Let's learn from it. And that's a great culture to build. And you as a leader, that's a great perspective to have. Anyway, we're like this has been a great conversation. We've gone a long time. We could keep going, but I think there's some incredible nuggets for us to take away from this. And Max, I really appreciate you telling your story, being vulnerable, and helping to encourage, going to that place of pain, but helping to encourage all of us. And I'm right there with you, man. So all of us are in this together, and I really appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, this has been a really fun conversation. I wasn't sure how this was going to go, because it does bring up a lot of
Yeah.
interesting feelings. But yeah, this was really fun and honestly really cathartic. So so thanks for
Good.
bringing me on so I
Well,
could
we'll
kind
just
of
call it a
get
therapy
some of this
session.
stuff.
Yeah.
Dude, absolutely. I love it.
All right. Thanks, Max.